Welcome into the Lucas and Lucas podcast and a very eventful Tuesday here on the first day of November in 2022, shortly after noon Eastern. We got the news that Steve Nash was fired by the Brooklyn Nets. Of course, they tweet out the whole thing, parted ways. Who knows what the hell that means? But either way, Mike, Steve Nash is gone. What is your initial reaction to the Nets making that move? Before we get to Ime Udoka, because that's a whole other thing.
We'll start with Nash. It's not shocking at all. It's not surprising.
Why though? Why? But like, obviously, all right. Obviously, we need a little more backstory here because when Nash,
I literally said 4 words and you cut me off and you wanted to dig in.
Right. I meant to tee you up by saying that you texted me after you heard that saying this was inevitable, and I was like, really?
Yeah. I mean, listen, as soon as they hired Steve Nash as the head coach, you had Kyrie Irving come out and say, we don't need a head coach. We're all the head coaches on the court. They have butted heads on everything. The head coach is always the scapegoat in these situations. With so much drama, including this offseason, where Kevin Durant gave the team an ultimatum. It's Steve Nash or me. They came to a conclusion there, but you don't just repatch that relationship. This is what I was terrified of when that happened was you could say all the right things and you could say, hey, we'll work together. We'll make this work. But some relationships just don't work. And Steve Nash with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and this team did not mesh the way that I had foreseen it meshing. It did not work the way I foresaw it working. And with all the stuff that's going on in the first 7 games of the season, the 2-5 record, this whole Kyrie saga now, it is not all Steve Nash's fault, but he was always the first domino that was going to fall. And I think Sean Marks is looking at this team from an eagle-eye perspective and from a 3,000 foot bird's eye view saying 2-5 is unacceptable. We need change, and waiting to make said change only delays us progressing and taking a step forward. So it was inevitable because Nash was always the first domino that was going to fall. It's a little surprising it happened this early. I wouldn't have guessed 7 games in it would have happened. But if you thought anyone was being moved before Steve Nash or a coaching change was made, I think you were lying to yourself. As crazy as Kyrie's been.
Do you think that this whole Kyrie Irving situation has just changed Nash's just viewpoint of the team? Do you think that he is like, oh my God? You think, yeah, okay, go ahead.
I think I'll be honest, I bet you he's ecstatic to get out of there. I think he's obviously bummed it didn't work, but sometimes when you're in a toxic relationship, when you get out immediately, you know that was the right move, and that's better for my future. And I think Steve Nash was tired of the daily controversy that is Kyrie Irving, tired of the saga of Kevin Durant. I mean, how do you think of your Steve Nash? Kevin Durant gave your boss the ultimatum. It's me or him. And the boss said, well, I'm not really going to fire you, but I have to listen to him. So let's make peace here and play. Well, Steve Nash, I mean, we saw him explode for the first time ever like 2 weeks ago.
Which was shocking.
Yeah. And once I saw that, I was like, all right, Steve Nash at the end of his line too. If he's finally going to show some emotion on the sideline, he must be doing like final grasp, trying to hold on to that last rock on the cliff before he falls off to his demise. And I think that was that didn't cause him to be fired by any means, but I think that just showed the crack in his psyche that this was the word I keep using is inevitable. I really think this was inevitable, Frank.
I think the reality of the situation, Mike, is he wasn't a very good coach.
And that's part of it too. You're right.
And I was mad they didn't get rid of him after they got swept by the Celtics, because during his whole tenure with the Nets, for the most part, I mean, granted, who knows about how much actual say he had in terms of the game plan and what offensive strategies and plays and sets they were running. But the offense was bring the ball up the court. Here, Kevin, here's ball, make play, score. Like, there was never any creativity. There was never any adjustments. There was never anything that was like, oh, wow, and my whole time watching the Nets under Steve Nash, it was never like, wow, what a great play design. Wow, they really have great offensive flow right now. It's always just been like the stars just scoring, and the Nets just needed more structure and someone to have a little more of a authoritative figure there to sort of lead the way. Who knows if that could ever happen with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on the team. But another question I have for you, Mike, is so Ime Udoka is going to be the new coach. That's basically the way it's going to happen. And listen, if I said 6 months ago at this time, whatever it was, 5 months ago at this time, I said, I can't believe the Nets had Ime Udoka on their staff and they chose Steve Nash over him. It was baffling. It was shocking.
Agreed. We both agreed.
Because Ime Udoka you saw what he did with the Celtics. The Celtics were not supposed to be this. I mean, they obviously had potential to be a really solid team, but the way he was able to take that team and take them from being, a 4 to 8 seed in the Eastern Conference range to being, one of the best teams in the NBA. And, he coached the living hell of that team. He got so much out of Marcus Smart, so much out of Jaylen Brown, so much out of Jason Tatum, and took them to heights that I didn't know that they would be able to get back to after their, they made the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago. But he did it. And then obviously the whole suspension thing happened where he had the affair. I was not there. I don't know what happened. I don't think this is a whole domestic case, not that I'm aware of. I think the Nets would hopefully have done their due diligence, but part of me wants to believe, Mike, and that assuming they did their homework on Ime Udoka, and I like to believe that they did. If Ime Udoka was not available, do the Nets still move as swiftly as they did with Steve Nash? No, you say
No.
you're shaking your head no.
No, listen, shout out to you for calling it 5-6 months ago that Udoka was the best coach on that staff. And to Steve Nash's credit, that was his first year as a head coach. And what he did was he surrounded himself with a lot of really good assistants. He had Mike D'Antoni running the offense. He had Ime Udoka running the defense. Those two guys had all this experience. And as soon as they kind of left, we started to see the structure of the Brooklyn Nets start to crumble. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that Udoka wasn't there, that D'Antoni isn't there, that it was Steve Nash on his own. And I just don't think he was ready for the level of scrutiny and exposure that comes with being a coach of a team with two of the highest profile superstars in the NBA. Udoka, on the other hand, was beloved by the Nets players when he was an assistant coach there. They all talked about how wonderful it was to play for him, how they respected the hell out of him, how Boston was getting a great hire and a first-time head coach. And he proved them right by taking Boston to the championship last year, and then they lost the Warriors. Obviously, he comes with his own set of baggage, but hell, the Nets have a 18-wheeler filled with baggage from Kyrie Irving alone, and there's a next one with Kevin Durant's baggage, and there's another one with Ben Simmons' baggage. Just throw a fourth 18-wheeler onto the carousel going down the highway with Udoka and his situation, and to me, this is an all-in move by Sean Marks. This is Sean Marks' last swing to keep his seat at the table as pristine as it is, to keep this team together. And when you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, as batshit crazy as Irving is, and we can talk about him whenever you want, you have a chance to play for a title. You have a chance to compete at the highest level. Steve Nash was playing the starters way too much. Playing Kevin Durant and Irving 40 minutes a game this early in the season is not sustainable. We saw it last year. It's how bodies break down. I think Udoka, they will finally, hopefully, they will listen to him and buy into what he's trying to do on both ends of the court. And the one concern I have, Frank, and I want to flip this back to you on this, we do know at least Durant and Irving respect Udoka from his time as an assistant coach. He got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to buy into his system immediately. Now, those guys are both young. Do you think Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are capable of respecting any coach at this point in their career? Honest question. As a head coach, not as an assistant, as a head coach.
I can't speak for Kyrie Irving because he obviously just, as we've seen, he just does whatever he wants whenever he wants and does not give a damn what anyone else thinks about anything. I do think Kevin Durant, as much as he maybe doesn't want to admit it, sort of likes having someone there to like sort of guide him and be like, hey, he needs, I feel like someone there to just be like, hey, like, just listen to me, like, for once. And I don't know, that's how sort of I believe it. But obviously it's a very, soap opera-ish situation, and every day it's a whole new drama thing. Last point though about Steve Nash. Do you believe he ever actually wanted to be an NBA head coach? Do you think that when Steve Nash was done playing, was doing his consulting stuff with the Warriors, that his goal was one day to become an NBA head coach?
Probably not.
Do you believe that he ever coaches an NBA team ever again?
Yeah, I think I do, because I think this is going to leave such a sour taste in his mouth with how not how he left. I think he's ecstatic to leave, but in a year or two, I think he's going to get that itch to say, you know what, I have to prove to people that I can coach. Because I do think Steve Nash has a lot of qualities that would make a good coach. I don't think he was a good coach with the Nets. I also think it was probably the hardest situation a brand new first-time NBA head coach had ever stepped into, dealing with what he's had to deal with the last couple of years. So yeah, I don't think he ever necessarily wanted to coach. I think it was an opportunity that presented itself that was too good to pass up. Mind you, Kyrie said, we don't have a real head coach. We have 4 head coaches on the court by ourselves. So Steve Nash may have said coming in, hey, I'm just going to show up. I'll get the credit when we win. And here's the thing, Frank, we're an injury and a toe away from Steve Nash being an NBA champion as a head coach. Like, I know
everyone keeps talking about it. I hate looking back at that.
But I'm just saying, like,
The
yes,
past is the
I
past.
think we all agree. We all agree Steve Nash is not a great NBA head coach. I think we could argue Mike Budenholzer is not a great NBA head coach. But Budenholzer, because of injuries to the Nets and an unfortunately large foot by Kevin Durant, played and won an NBA championship that year when the Nets probably could have and should have because they were the best team in the league. So it's not all on coaching. Like, the Nets' demise has not all been on coaching, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And although Steve Nash, I don't think is a great coach, I think the way this ended and his overall outlook on his tenure as a Nets coach will leave a sour taste in his mouth, which will eventually lead him to get back into coaching in the NBA.
I think Steve Nash has other aspirations in life. I think he wants to be like a Premier League soccer analyst. I think he wants to just like do some NBA consulting work on the side and sort of just live his life. I just feel like he never really wanted to live in this world where he was being asked questions every day and always talking to me. I just feel like he just wants to enjoy life. Like, he's not one of those guys who he's got enough money in the world where he doesn't have to do this. He could just sort of enjoy his life and go about his business, however he likes. I just feel like Kevin Durant called him and was like, hey, listen, I want you to be our coach. And he was like, all right, Kevin, fine. If you really want me to do it, I'll do it. So he did it. I feel like he did it reluctantly. He never really truly embraced being the coach. And given all the drama, was just like, he knew deep down he didn't really want to be there. And I do believe that he is truly relieved that this is officially over for him. And I do believe the Nets are in a much exponentially better position right now with Ime Udoka.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that pans out. We'll see when he coaches his first game. I don't know what the process is like. The Nets will not give the Celtics any compensation, so that's a good thing as well. So
is he, by the way, he's suspended by the Celtics, correct?
Not by the league, just by the team.
So
he violated team rules.
He could coach the next game after he's officially
theoretically could coach Tuesday night against the Bulls, but I don't believe he's going to be able to get there in time.
But theoretically speaking, he could.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe he'll be in the building. Maybe he'll get they'll give him a standing ovation for the game. Who knows? Couple other encore things with the Nets. Ben Simmons is a debacle. He is terrible at basketball. I know he's obviously still working his way back from back surgery. Now he's dealing with a knee injury. But I forgot what he looked like when he was like an elite player and an all-star. I can't even like picture that player in my mind now because all I see is someone who plays decent defense, occasionally makes a nice pass, and has absolutely zero scoring ability on the offensive side of the court. He can dunk occasionally, but when it comes to actually being someone you should fear offensively, to me, I see absolutely nothing there. I would not put him in the starting lineup. I would play him off the bench because I just think he's holding this team back. It's no secret why the Nets won last night. Ben Simmons was not active for the game, and they didn't have to deal with that liability on the court. And right now, that's what he is. He's a major liability in the offensive end of the court, and I really believe he's holding this team back. And I question whether he can ever get back to being a legitimate NBA talent.
Yeah.
That's why I stand on him.
No, it's valid. And you watch Simmons, and I've watched 3 games this year. He is so timid and scared of anything around the rim. And he can't shoot, so he needs to live around the rim. And he goes up, and he's 6'10", and he's yoked, and he's athletic. And he goes up with these little fadeaway fallers, so scared of contact because he's terrified of getting fouled and have to go to the free throw line and shoot with people watching. And it's mental. It is all mental, and there's no way to coach him out of that. Psychologists see it there. Like, I don't know the answer, but the Ben Simmons we're watching play on a daily basis now is not the same Ben Simmons we saw in Philadelphia. And I don't just mean from a player to player. He's a different person. And
I mean, I don't even remember what he looked like. I don't even remember.
Only reason I remember is I saw a Twitter reel going around the other day. It was like 40 seconds of Ben Simmons being Ben Simmons. And I was like, if the Nets had that Ben Simmons, they could compete. The Ben Simmons they have right now is like a 74 in 2K. Like, yeah, if he's your 5th starter, sure. But he clogs the lane. You can't play him with another true big because there's just no spacing on the floor. Teams play off him so far. What I want to see, Frank, and I'm too small, I was never able to do this, but if someone played 6 steps off me and gave me the ability to get a running head start to the rim, and I was 6'10", 245 pounds of pure muscle, I would go Russell Westbrook and just go to attack the rim and make them foul you, make them stop me. And I know he's terrified of it, but that's there. And if he starts doing that, hopefully it'll get teams to start at least defending him closer so he can't get that running head start which makes guys like Giannis and LeBron impossible to stop when they're going downhill. And he's obviously not that kind of offensive talent, but
he could be, though. He could
that's
be
what I'm
that
saying.
type
He
of.
has the body type to do that. So if at least he did it and attempted to make them defend him in that sense, the defenses would have to step out and play him on the outside as opposed to just sagging in the lane, which then clogs everything else up for everybody. And the Nets are playing 4-on-5 offensive right now. He brings literally nothing to the court for them.
I mean, I'm part of me wants to believe that this knee injury is a phantom thing, and they're just like putting him through some sort of like, what are those things? When you like
mental,
when you go there and like they try to like toughen you up, or like an epiphany or something like that. They want to like just run him through a gauntlet of things and be like, it's like, so at summer camp, when you would have like this thing called rope burn. I never got to do it because I didn't get but like they psych you up beforehand. They like hit you with stuff, and then just like, and then you come out of that room like an animal ready to attack. And I just feel like that's what Ben Simmons needs. He needs to like feel like a big hit or contact or something, just to know that he can. Maybe it's just a mental hurdle with his back where he just is so scared of re-injuring himself that he has sort of lost that aggressiveness. He needs to like know in his mind that he can just go out there and put his head down and just roll, because that he has got a similar body type to LeBron and Giannis, where he should be able to just get the ball and just bulldoze his way to the basket and either get fouled or score. Like that's what Giannis does.
It was like when Alex Smith broke his leg and he had to get sacked again to feel comfortable in the pocket. He had to know he could get hit and not snap his fibula in half. Yeah. And that has to be terrifying. Like, I do empathize with Ben Simmons a little bit in that regard. It has to be terrifying, but also you're being paid millions and millions and millions of dollars to be an elite player in the NBA, a premier player. And if you're not living up to that, then there's issues. Like, there are legit issues with that. He's essentially stealing money from the Nets, and I know that's not how sports work, and he deserves every penny. But the expectations that come along with making 25, 30, I don't know what his salary is, 30 million, something like that a year, is to be a good player. And right now, Ben Simmons is not that. So, Ben, if you're listening, I know you are. You're an avid listener to the Lucas and Lucas podcast once weekly, sometimes twice, sometimes not. Go get hit, get in the gym, do it in practice, whatever you got to do, just get hit with that mental hurdle, man. We need you. The Nets need you.
I mean, my hopes aren't super high for Ben Simmons now. I know it's early. Maybe I'm being, too prisoner of the moment, but I'm just not seeing it. Interesting note here I just got from we have someone who does projections with our company. And he did a comparison. Nets with Steve Nash as head coach and Nets with Ime Udoka as head coach. And their percentage to make the playoffs went from 80% with Steve Nash to 95% with Ime Udoka. Their percentage to win the Eastern Conference went from 7.3% with Nash to over 17% with Udoka, and their championship odds went from 2.5% to over 8.5% with Udoka. So those aren't minimal swings there. That's massive. That
based on what we've seen.
Oh, I thought you were going to question based on what. But
no. Based on what we've seen from just the coaching acumen of Nash and Udoka, it's a massive upgrade. Just based on their pure coaching acumen, massive upgrade. Now we'll see how Udoka meshes with this locker room. We'll see how he's able to handle Kyrie and KD. But from a pure coaching perspective, if you were to rate them in 2K or whatever, as far as head coaching rankings go, you're looking at Udoka, who's a 90, 95, and Steve Nash has been a low 80 in his career. So it is a mess. I'm not shocked that the odds jumped as high as they did.
So, and to be fair with the Nets, Seth Curry's played in one game. He's still going through ankle issues. Joe Harris still working his way back. I thought the Nets improved over the offseason when they got
Royce O'Neal,
and assuming Ben Simmons was going to be somewhat competent, but he's been absolutely completely
TJ Warren at some point will come back.
Maybe. I mean, we'll see. Maybe Ben Simmons just needs time, but we'll see. Either way, the Nets getting Ime Udoka is a massive win, and them losing Steve Nash is not a loss. Steve Nash has all the means in the world to live a fantastic life the rest of his life, and I don't believe he ever coaches again, but that's where we'll leave it with the Brooklyn Nets. Right now they play the Bulls on Tuesday night. We'll see how they respond with Jacques Vaughn as the interim coach. Moving on to the NFL, Mike, I think Sunday's game for the Jets was the moment in the season where things just take a massive turn for the worse. It's the first game without Breece Hall, first game without Elijah Vera Tucker, and Zach Wilson finally had to show whether he could be a true quarterback, and he completely urinated all over himself on the field. 3 interceptions, just did his best Johnny Manziel in a bad way impersonation. I thought he was absolutely horrific. My confidence level for him is very low right now. He's completely holding this team back. And I hate to say it, I feel like the Jets are going to have to turn elsewhere for a quarterback in the near future.
Yeah, I did not see any of the Jets game, I'll be honest. I did see they had a pick 6. They got called back on roughing the passer penalty.
And that killed them.
Which was tough to overcome. I think the same sentiment can be said about the Giants, though. I did watch the Giants game on Sunday, start to finish, and in the same sentiment that the Jets season is taking a turn for the worse, the Giants were the worst 6-1 team maybe in NFL history. And losing to Seattle brings back into reality that this team's just not very talented. And they had been winning games based on turnover luck, some really good coaching, and some fortunate scheduling. And that all flipped in this one. We saw them muff 2 punts in the fourth quarter, which led to Seattle scoring. So the turnover luck bit him in the ass there. We saw Daniel Jones with limited options on the outside at receiver look very pedestrian. I don't think he's thrown for 220 yards in a game yet this season, which is hard to fathom. Frank, in today's passing NFL, they just don't throw the ball well. He has no receivers, but they just don't move the ball downfield. And as soon as they got down by more than a touchdown late, it felt like an insurmountable deficit to climb out of for a Giants team that's just not built to score points in bunches. They're just not. That's not how this offense is built. And without Evan Neal at right tackle, the running attack wasn't as good as it was. I think Seattle's better than I gave them credit for. And I wouldn't be surprised if after a 5-2 start for the Jets and a 6-1 start for the Giants, we see those two teams go combined 2-8 in the next couple of weeks. Like I think both teams were fool's gold.
The Jets were like Breece Hall was such a difference maker for the Jets. Yes. I do believe if the Jets still had Breece Hall, that I wouldn't be this pessimistic about the team. But listen, their preseason win total is 5.5. They were already at 5 wins. Most people predicted them to start the season 0-7, and after 8 games, they're 5-3. They're going to lose. They're going to get crushed by the Bills this week. They're 13.5-point underdogs, so that's not game. That game is going to be a no contest. But then they got the Patriots again after the bye, so like they'll be 5-5 here in the near future, and then we'll see how they respond after that. But Zach Wilson's got to show me something. Last thing before we go, I was just looking at the odds for the NFL this week. Mm-hmm. Did you see the line for the Packers Lions game?
No, but you want to play guess the line real quick?
What would you guess? What would you guess? It's in Detroit.
Packers by 1.5.
No, it's 3.5. The Lions are atrocious. I know like the Packers haven't done great, but I feel like they finally shown signs of life against the Bills in that second half. I feel like that line should be like 6.5 or 7. I feel like that's my bet of the year in the NFL. I haven't bet in a while, but I feel like I'm gonna hammer the Packers this week. 3.5 against a dreadful Lions.
They're due too. They have to play a good game at some point. The Lions can score though. The Packers defense has been suspect. The Lions can't score.
It's also such a trap.
I know.
It's they're baiting you to take Green Bay, but I don't know what I'm gonna do there. But
I hit on 7 of my 8 picks this week, so I haven't looked at the spreads yet, but I do like Green Bay there. It is a trap, but also they've lost the Jets, the Giants, the Bills, and I do think the Lions by trading Hawkinson today are pretty much throwing the white flag, and they're playing for the. And
that's a great point. Hammer the Packers.
Yeah, and Rodgers also always kills the Lions. Like that's a team. Now they're certainly not as good this year as they've been in past years, but I would. You know what, Frank? I'll put a bet on them right now. I'll put a bet on them right now. So
I will get to it. I will get to it as well. But that will do it for this edition of the Lucas and Lucas podcast. We'll see how the Brooklyn Nets respond with Ime Udoka as the head coach. See you all next week for an update.